Last week in Michigan politics, your voice, your vote. The next major election year is already off to a heated start. The latest news on key statewide races. Plus, state lawmakers are back in session for the year, what we could expect from the months ahead, and what's already on the move. Plus, 3 West Michigan communities still trying to figure out how they'll get fire department coverage after a contract runs out this year. What locals are saying and planning. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. We begin with continued reaction following the shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis by an immigration and customs enforcement agent earlier this month. A new Quinnipiac poll out Tuesday found that the majority of respondents believe the shooting to have been unjustified. Many federal officials have claimed the agent was acting in self-defense. Now, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, the state's top law enforcement official, says in her opinion, the ICE officers in Minneapolis appeared to have, quote, very little training. During an interview with 13 on Your Side on Thursday, Nessel said it seemed clear that such was not the kind of training that state police officers receive in Michigan. She described the shooting as incredibly upsetting and unnecessary, and is very concerned about a reported decision by the Justice Department to not immediately seek a full criminal civil rights investigation.
And I think people should know and understand that every single time there is an officer-involved shooting or an in-custody death, or even, in most cases, of any allegations of use of excessive force, we investigate those cases fully, even if it's a case where there is an obvious justification for the shooting on behalf of that officer.
Nessel is calling on Congress to pass legislation to, in her view, hold ICE officers accountable. And Republican State Senator Eric Nesbitt and Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson, both current candidates for Michigan governor, also responding to that shooting. Swanson says law enforcement should build trust and bring the community together. He says this situation and how agents responded is driving people apart. In a statement on social media, Nesbitt saying, quote, we are going to ban every sanctuary city in this state and stand 100% with ICE as they complete their mission to keep America safe. Your voice, your vote, and the first major shift this year for the state's all-important midterm elections. Michigan Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist announced Monday he is suspending his campaign for governor and is instead running for another statewide office in November. We spoke with him this week to find out what this announcement could mean for both races.
The time for me to be the governor of Michigan may come, but the time for me to be Secretary of State is 2026.
Just days into the new election year and already the first major shakeup in some of our top statewide races. Democratic Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist announcing today he's suspending his campaign for governor and instead running for Secretary of State.
Nobody leaned on me or pressured me to make a choice to get out of the governor's race, but upon reflection and thinking about what Michiganders told me what was important to them and what they needed in 2026, I just felt like this was actually the right role for me to step into at this time.
Now, this could mean big shifts in more than one statewide contest. In the race for Secretary of State he's now joining, he's one of, if not the biggest name in the running for the Democratic nomination so far.
Folks were telling me about everything from high prices and being worried about the Trump administration and corporate power. And they told me that they were worried about the democratic process. They were just worried that if that system actually breaks down, we can't vote people in who are going to fix the other systems. We can't vote people in who are going to hold corporations accountable. We're going to protect our environment. And as an engineer, I want to fix the system that underlies all the systems.
But going up against a number of candidates, including Ingham County Clerk Barb Byram, former State Senator Adam Hollier, and Susanna Shkreli, most recently the Michigan Lottery Commissioner. Those vying for the Republican nomination include activist and businesswoman Monica Yatuma, Macomb County Clerk Anthony Forlini, and Clarkston Community School Board member Amanda Love. In the governor's race, we'll have to see where his now former supporters go and what his exit means for current Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who's been pretty much a clear frontrunner in many of the polls. Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson being the other high-profile name in the running for that Democratic nomination. Polling released last month showed in a hypothetical November matchup, Benson down 6 points to Congressman John James, who the poll saw as leading the Republican field amongst respondents over candidates like State Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, former State Attorney General Mike Cox, and former Speaker of the State House Tom Leonard. With about 7 months to the primary and 10 to the midterm election, a lot of room for these races to still shape up. Stick with 13 on your side as we cover them all the way to the end. And the race for governor continues to heat up, it seems, with another poll out just this week. According to the Detroit News and WDIV, a poll commissioned by the outlets and reported Tuesday showed in one hypothetical three-way November matchup, roughly 34% of respondents backed Republican Congressman John James, widely seen as the current frontrunner for his party's nomination. 32% backed Democratic Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, also widely seen as her party's current frontrunner, and 26% backed now former Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, running as an independent. When Duggan wasn't included as an option, the News reported, Benson led James 47-45. A powerful figure in the Michigan State House from here in West Michigan, Majority Floor Leader Brian Posthumus of Rockford has announced he will not run for re-election this year. Posthumus, the Majority Floor Leader since last January, says he is honoring a commitment to only serve 3 terms. He had served as the Minority Floor Leader, but became the Majority Floor Leader when his party retook the House after the 2024 elections. He calls his time in office a, quote, true honor. In his statement, Posthumus says, while Republicans and Democrats have many differences, they are united by the desire to leave Michigan a better place. Ottawa County leaders are hoping a new video posted on social media will help recruit workers for this year's election.
Hey, I really enjoyed learning more about local government last year. Are there any more opportunities to get involved this year? Sure, you could sign up to be an election worker. Election worker? Hey, that sounds cool. What's that all about?
The county posted the video on Facebook. County Clerk Justin Roebuck says there is a greater need this year with 9 mandatory days of early voting for both the August primary and the November election. In all, he said, there are about 1,200 people who serve as election workers there, with a pay rate varying by township or city. Roebuck says on average the position pays about $15 an hour. Workers will also be provided with hands-on training in advance of the election. Go to miottawa.org/election workers to learn more. Michigan lawmakers are back in session for this critical election year, and it seems they've already started getting to work. Coming up, we dive into what we could expect from the legislature this year and into one of the first bills they took up surrounding cell phones in schools. At the state capitol, the Michigan legislature is back in session for the year. Republican Speaker Matt Hall reflected this past week and laid out plans for the coming year. In terms of bills signed into law, last year was the slowest in decades. But Hall applauded his chamber's work last year and signaled he's proud of what he called a major oversight year. Looking ahead to the 2026 agenda, Hall says the focus is clear.
Affordability is going to be the focus this year for the House on property taxes, housing costs, health care, energy costs, and we're excited to hit the ground working with Governor Whitmer to do these things.
One of the House's first actions this year was passing a bill to restrict cell phones in schools. The measure passed this week with bipartisan support 99-10. A past version of the bill failed just last year. Under the bill that's now passed the House, districts and public academies must put a wireless communications device policy in place. This would need to include prohibiting students from using them on school grounds during instructional time, but can include more if the district decides. There would be some exceptions to that, including during emergency situations and for medically necessary and district-owned devices. That bill now heads to the state Senate. The latest numbers on how much revenue the state is expected to get are now in. and it could be much less than was previously estimated. New numbers were discussed this past week at what's called the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference, which includes input from the fiscal agencies of both the State House and Senate, as well as the State Treasury Department. For its combined general fund and school aid fund, state analysts are expecting a 0.2% increase in net revenue this year and a 1.1% increase in the next fiscal year that starts on October 1st. That's about 80 million more and 373 million more respectively. However, that is much lower than was estimated just last May. In fact, these new estimates are about $780 million lower for this year and $1.1 billion lower for next year. Members of House Republican leadership were quick in responding to these new numbers, arguing those justify efforts so far to cut down on what they feel is wasteful government spending. A Democratic member of the Appropriations Committee in the House, Alburtus Farhat of Dearborn, urged lawmakers to make what he called smart choices and to get a budget done by the end of June. Now to a scam alert. Watch out for imposters claiming to be with government or law enforcement agencies. Attorney General Nessel's office says she's received reports of callers pretending to be an Oakland County Sheriff's deputy. The scammer, the office said, demands money to resolve a legal issue or leaves a voicemail about an urgent legal matter. Nessel says to verify with the agency directly using a publicly listed phone number, not the number that called you. She says government agencies will never demand money over email, phone, or by text. They also will not ask for payment by gift card, wire transfer, cryptocurrency, or a pay app. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was on the state's east side Thursday for the final Detroit Auto Show during her time as governor. The term-limited Whitmer will leave office next year. But before she goes, she had some notes on the state's all-important auto industry, the economy, and the use of tariffs. Of course, tariffs have become a big political and economic flashpoint as President Donald Trump has sought to significantly ramp up their usage over the past year and, in his view, equalize international trade situations. Whitmer believes tariffs have taken what she called a terrible toll, basically reiterating a major theme of hers this past year, that they have their place, but they can't work alone and won't, quote, magically restore American manufacturing. Instead, she argued for having what she called a clear strategy and doubling down on what she feels are our strengths of innovation and collaboration.
A fully assembled vehicle requires nearly 30,000 parts. Producing all of them in the United States is impractical and, in many cases, not possible. There are 0 vehicles on the road, 0, made with 100% U.S. parts today. Collaboration is a strength, not a weakness.
Now, this was a speech that focused a bit on the overarching economy, industry, and national policy relating to Michigan. We're likely to see more of Whitmer's own agenda for this state in particular when she delivers her expected State of the State address later this year. 3 West Michigan townships are still trying to figure out how their communities will get fire department coverage after a contract runs out this year. Continuing coverage on what community members are saying and what community leaders are doing, that's next. The Grand Rapids City Commission is adopting a new ordinance banning amplified sound from protests and demonstrations near healthcare facilities in the city. It comes after months of consideration and a final discussion lasting more than half an hour. The new ordinance bans all amplified sound within 100 feet of a healthcare hospital or clinic. The initiative was presented by the interim city attorney in December and specifically named Planned Parenthood on Cherry Street and the demonstrations held outside as a source of concern for those who live in the Heritage Hill neighborhood.
I also think because it's 100 feet from each building, each property line, that can get really, really confusing for protesters and for law enforcement alike to know when are you in violation, when are you not in violation.
We can always modify things. So there is something up for a vote today, and I understand you're going to vote no on it. But if it passes, it seems to me that one reasonable thing one might do would be to ask for a further modification of this in the future.
Continuing coverage now on a story we've been bringing to you. The leaders in 3 West Michigan townships, Ensley, Nelson, and Pearson, continue to move forward with plans about how they'll provide fire service when their contract with Sand Lake expires at the end of March. This past week, Nelson Township met to discuss those plans going forward. The township supervisor, Robin Britton, believed the best plan going forward is to purchase the fire department from the village of Sand Lake. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson was at the meeting and has more on what's being discussed, including a possible backup plan to create a new department.
Tammy Koistra lives in Ensley Township and has a son with a rare medical condition where quick medical attention is sometimes needed. She says the Sand Lake Fire Department has been quick to help.
He would have seizures and stop breathing and hold his breath, and they have been my son's lifeline.
She's worried now that the village of Sand Lake has said it's terminating its contract with Ensley and 2 other townships for fire service.
Imagine having to wait for an ambulance because you don't have the fire department showing up. So imagine the fear that, me having a medically fragile child who, doesn't walk, doesn't talk, has this rare disorder that causes seizures and all kinds of other things. Imagine the fear that I have to go through.
Koistra attended a public Q&A session in Nelson Township where officials discussed how the 3 townships can move forward to provide that service. Township Supervisor Robin Britton announced this prior to the Q&A.
Nelson Township has made an offer to the village for the fire department.
Britton says the purchase of the fire department is priority number 1 in providing fire service to the Tri-County area. Although she's hopeful a deal can be struck, she says she isn't sugarcoating the fact that the March 31st deadline before the Sand Lake contract expires is fast approaching.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they will basically look at their next board meeting. I wish I was confident that we were going to make it by March 31st, but really the ball's in the village's court.
The volunteer firefighters who have served the Sand Lake Department were also recognized for their contributions at the meeting. More than a dozen of them signed a letter saying they're not interested in continuing with the Sand Lake Fire Department if they can't continue to serve the area of all 3 townships.
Most of them live in Ensley and Pearson Township that they don't feel comfortable leaving their communities behind. So they signed that letter basically stating that as of March 31st, they are done when we are done.
And continuing coverage of a possible data center from Microsoft in Lowell Township. Hundreds showed up for a planning commission meeting, which did not happen. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson was also at that meeting, and as he explains, there were too many people once again.
Signs across the community of Lowell, including ones on the outside of historic buildings, carry the same message that several residents took to the Planning Commission Monday night. No data center.
While people were happy the meeting was adjourned early after once again exceeding fire capacity, many were still unhappy residents weren't able to make public comment voicing their opposition. Data center opponent Greg Forbes criticized the township's governance.
People have come out for the 2nd month in a row hoping to express their opinion on this project, and they've been prevented from doing that. What type of governance structure is that?
Last week, 13 on your side obtained an email from Microsoft to township officials, formally introducing itself as the company looking to build a data center at Alden Nash Avenue near I-96. Betsy Lopez Wagner with the group Residents for a United Healthy Lowell says Microsoft hasn't been transparent with the community and says it's not welcome.
We recognize the importance of our community, the importance of our natural resources, as well as the health, the public safety, and the environment that's here. So we're going to continue to show up. We will continue to shut things down.
Luke Marine, a local business owner, stressed the potential negative impact on local businesses and the environment.
We own a fishing store called Fish and Fin Outfitters, and so basically we make all of our money, off of people fishing and stuff, and we're worried about the contamination of the water, which could get back into the rivers.
Monday's Planning Commission meeting was originally scheduled to take place at the Lowell High School auditorium to account for a potentially large crowd. We tried to speak with the Planning Commission chair about why this was changed. He declined to comment. The next Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for February 9th. In Lowell Township, Nick Nelson, 13 on your side.
And an update to another story we brought you this month about a man who shared his story of being deaf and the challenges he faces while attending public meetings. Tyler Shepard from Lowell talked to us this month, saying he noticed the problem when he attended a meeting last month. Lowell Township made arrangements this past week to have an American Sign Language interpreter at their meeting. Shepard, who was there, says he's pleased by the progress and is hoping other communities will do the same. As more people have been moving to West Michigan, communities across the region are experiencing growing pains. In Lowell, the water treatment facility is long overdue for an expansion, and now help may be on the way from the federal government. This month, the local congressman told us that legislation passed by the U.S. House a couple weeks ago included roughly $1.2 million to expand the Lowell water treatment plant. Lowell city manager says the new money provides a nice start to the project. Mike Byrne says discussions to enlarge the plant go back nearly 40 years. The facility serves the city of Lowell, Virgins Township, and parts of Lowell Township as well. The area has seen extensive growth, with new housing developments putting a strain on operations, even leading to water use restrictions in the summer months. Here's Republican Congressman John Molinar.
Similar to California, where people have these restrictions, and as the community continues to grow, there needs to be a plan in place to ensure access to good, clean water.
Molinar says he expects the bill to easily pass the U.S. Senate and be signed by the president. Lowell's city manager says any money the city can secure from the government will help minimize rate hikes for customers. The overall project is expected to cost about $10 million. Now, if you're wondering about the proposed data center in Lowell Township, many opponents raise concerns about possible water usage. Byrne says no matter what happens with that development, as proposed, the water plant expansion will move forward. And the lack of housing is impacting many in our state, but leaders in one West Michigan county are trying to fix that problem with home ownership. 13 on our side's Lauren Baker has more on the small home footprint you could use to build your home.
The housing issue in West Michigan isn't just impacting people getting homes, it's also impacting home ownership.
The ability to become a homeowner has become more and more challenging.
That's Paul Sachs with Ottawa County's Department of Strategic Impact. He says he's seen how the lack of homes has impacted people living in his county, and his department may have a solution.
This project, we released it strategically with these visuals of these home designs. Say, hey, look how beautiful they can be, how well constructed, how practical, how cost effective.
He's talking about these 16 different free small home footprints that anyone in the county can use to build a home 1,000 square feet or less. All of these homes are based on the different home styles you see in the county.
They will get a sheet set of construction plans for each home. They would have to work with an engineer and building official and get those stamped and certified. But we're giving them a big step forward, if you will, on having plans that are nearly ready to bring to a builder.
And this isn't just for residents. Sachs says the plans could be used by local governments and even developers to use to address housing issues.
This product type that we're sharing is a conversation piece, and it's an educational piece. You look at these plans, if they make sense, have conversations with your local leaders. Let's talk through the zoning challenges. Talk with your neighbors.
Because he says having concrete plans already mapped out could give everyone a jump start on home ownership.
Rough estimates on pricing are around $300,000 for the higher-end models. But Sachs says they will be working with a nonprofit in Holland to build some of these units to see how much it would actually cost for residents. We have a link to those plans and more on the project on our website, 13onyourside.com. President Trump visited Detroit last week to talk economy, speaking to an economic club and touring an auto plant in Dearborn. Coming up, what the president had to say about the auto industry as well under his administration and expert insight on what the state of that industry may be. Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin saying this past week a U.S. attorney contacted her the week before asking for an interview. She says the inquiry stems from a video Slotkin made back in November. We look at Slotkin's response to the alleged request.
Our freedom of speech is worth fighting for. Our values, our core values, are worth fighting for.
That was the message of one of Michigan's 2 U.S. senators on Wednesday, following what she says happened last week.
U.S. Attorney from the District of Columbia, former Fox host Jeanine Pirro, reached out asking to interview me because of a 90-second video that I filmed in November.
Democrat Alyssa Slotkin then referencing this video from last year.
I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
In which she and 5 other congressional lawmakers with military or intelligence backgrounds put this message to U.S. service members.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
President Donald Trump seemingly accusing the lawmakers of being, quote, traitors and of seditious behavior punishable by death, and claiming they should be arrested and put on trial.
Does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. To suggest and encourage that active duty service members defy the chain of command is a very dangerous thing for sitting members of Congress to do, and they should be held accountable.
A U.S. attorney inquiry wouldn't be the first official action related to the video. The FBI had reportedly opened its own inquiry, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had moved to censure Arizona Democratic Senator and retired Navy Captain Mark Kelly.
I basically repeated what is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the law for the military. Members of the military need to follow the law. It's very simple.
Slotkin accusing the president of using a playbook of intimidation and weaponizing the federal government.
He's used it with our universities, our corporations, our legal community, and with politicians who falsely believe that doing his bidding and staying quiet will keep them safe. No, I'm not going to do that.
And we did reach out to the U.S. Attorney's Public Affairs Office to confirm what Slotkin was saying in this video. We received a response saying, quote, "We do not confirm or deny the existence of an investigation." And President Donald Trump visited the east side of the state on Tuesday. He spoke to the Detroit Economic Club and toured a Dearborn auto plant. The president focused on his confidence in the state of the economy after a big year of changes. President Donald Trump touching down in Detroit Tuesday for a visit anchored in the economy.
The results are in and the Trump economic boom is officially begun.
Welcomed by both applause and opposition.
What's going on in this country is pretty heinous, if I'm honest.
And on the economy, according to the Detroit News, a poll commissioned by the publication and WDIV of 600 likely voters found nearly 2/3 saying their household costs had risen in the past year. But the president striking a positive tune.
Under our administration, growth is exploding, productivity is soaring, investment is booming, incomes are rising. Inflation is defeated.
According to a government report out last week, the U.S. trade deficit dropped roughly $19 billion from September to October. Trump tying the drop to new tariffs that initially sent shockwaves around the globe last spring.
There was the tariff that made America strong and powerful in past generations. Now, it's tariffs that are making money for Michigan.
Trump also visiting a Dearborn auto plant in his visit to a state heavily tied to the success of the industry.
I terminated the insane electric vehicle mandate and ended the war on internal combustion engines once and for all. I'm standing up for the American auto worker like no president has ever stood up before.
And how is the state of the auto industry 1 year into his term?
The state of the auto industry, I would say, is better than what would have been feared when the tariff situation really kind of intensified in sort of that April timeframe of last year. But we're still in a bit of transition. We're still kind of feeling our way through the kind of lingering impacts of tariffs.
Adjustments to initial tariffs, auto analyst Mike Wall signaled, helped change the dynamic. Car sales have held up well, he said, but with consumers stretched in monthly payments and loans, whether that will keep up is a concern. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online, at 13onyourside.com.